Have you ever had one of those moments where everything you built just crumbles, your relationship ends, your business fails, your health betrays you, and suddenly you're standing in the wreckage of your own life thinking, how did I get here? Most people respond to chaos in one of two ways. They either fight it with every ounce of strength they have, burning themselves out trying to control the uncontrollable, or they collapse completely, surrendering to despair, convincing themselves they're victims of circumstance. But there's a third way, a way discovered centuries ago by people who faced destruction on a scale most of us can't even imagine. Earthquakes that leveled cities, tsunamis that erased entire communities, wars that took everything from everyone. These people developed something extraordinary, not optimism, not denial, but a profound acceptance that allowed them to maintain complete inner peace even when their external world was falling apart. They called it Shikata, Ganai. It cannot be helped. And today you're going to learn exactly how it works and how it can transform the way you handle every crisis you'll ever face. But I need to warn you about something. This technique isn't comfortable. It's not motivational. It doesn't promise you'll get what you want. What it promises is something far more valuable, that you'll maintain your peace regardless of what happens. Before we go further, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And I want you to comment right now, what's the one thing in your life you're trying to control but can't? Write it down. This matters. Now let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel was 34 years old when his life imploded. Not gradually, not with warning signs he could have prepared for. Suddenly, completely, catastrophically. He woke up on a Tuesday morning next to his wife of 7 years. He kissed her goodbye. He went to work. He had a normal day, boring meetings, mediocre coffee, the usual complaints about management. He came home at 6:30. His wife wasn't there. That was unusual, but not alarming. Maybe she went to her mother's house. Maybe she was out with friends. 8 o'clock. Still not home, no text, no call. He tried her phone, straight to voicemail. 9 o'clock. He called her mother, her best friend, her sister. Nobody had seen her. 10 o'clock. He found the note on the kitchen counter. He'd walked past it 3 times without seeing it. 8 words. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. That's when his mind went blank, not with shock, not with disbelief, with a very specific thought that would consume him for the next 18 months. I can fix this. I can get her back. I just need to do the right things. For the next week, Daniel called her 43 times. He sent 67 text messages. He showed up at her new apartment twice. He wrote her a 12-page letter explaining everything he would change. She blocked his number. She threatened a restraining order. She told him clearly, "This is over. There's nothing you can do." But Daniel couldn't accept that, because accepting that meant accepting he had no control. And humans don't do well with no control. He hired a therapist who specialized in saving marriages. He read 17 books on relationships. He joined a support group. He started working out obsessively. He changed his wardrobe. He learned to cook her favorite meals even though she wasn't there to eat them. He was doing everything except the one thing that would actually help him. Accepting that it was over. 6 months passed. Daniel lost 23 pounds. His performance at work deteriorated so badly, his boss put him on a performance improvement plan. He stopped seeing friends. He stopped doing anything that wasn't about getting her back. And she wasn't coming back. She was already dating someone else. That's when Daniel had his first panic attack. In the middle of a grocery store. His heart started racing. His vision tunneled. He couldn't breathe. He collapsed next to the produce section. The paramedics came. They checked him out. Physically, he was fine. Mentally, he was destroying himself. The doctor at the emergency room asked him a question that changed everything. "What are you fighting?" Daniel didn't understand. "I'm not fighting anything. I'm just trying to fix my life." "No, you're at war with reality." and reality always wins that war. The doctor told him about a patient he'd treated 3 years earlier, a man who'd been in a severe car accident, paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors told him he'd never walk again. For 2 years, this man spent every waking moment trying to prove them wrong. Experimental treatments, aggressive physical therapy, alternative medicine, hypnosis, anything that promised even a 1% chance. And nothing worked because the damage was too severe. It couldn't be undone. By year 3, the man was suicidal, not because he couldn't walk, because he'd spent 3 years fighting something that couldn't be changed. That fight had destroyed him more than the accident ever did. Then he met a therapist who taught him about Shikata Ganai. It cannot be helped. At first, he thought it was giving up, surrendering, admitting defeat. But the therapist explained something crucial. There's a massive difference between acceptance and resignation. Resignation is passive. It says, there's nothing I can do, so I'll just suffer. Acceptance is active. It says, there's nothing I can do about this specific thing, so I'll focus my energy on what I can actually change. The paralyzed man stopped fighting to walk. He started adapting to life in a wheelchair. He redesigned his home. He found new hobbies. He reconnected with friends and family. Within 6 months, he reported being happier than he'd been before the accident. Not because his situation improved, because he stopped exhausting himself fighting reality. The doctor looked at Daniel. What are you fighting that can't be changed? Daniel opened his mouth to argue, to explain why his situation was different. Why he couldn't just give up, but he couldn't get the words out, because he knew. Deep down, he'd known for months, his wife wasn't coming back. That was reality. Fighting it wasn't bringing her back. It was just destroying him. That night, Daniel went home and did something he hadn't done in 6 months. He sat in complete silence. No phone, no TV, no distractions, just him and his thoughts. And for the first time, he asked himself the question he'd been avoiding. What if I just accepted this? Not accepted, it was fair. Not accepted, he deserved it. Just accepted, it was real. What if, instead of spending every day trying to reverse something that couldn't be reversed, he spent that energy building a new life? It felt like betrayal at first, like giving up, like admitting defeat. But then he remembered what the doctor said, resignation versus acceptance. He wasn't giving up. He was redirecting his energy from an unwinnable war to a battle he could actually win, the battle to rebuild himself. The next morning, Daniel did something simple. He deleted his ex-wife's number from his phone, not out of anger, out of acceptance. He wasn't going to call her. There was no point. She'd made her decision. It was done. Shikata Ganai. It cannot be helped. That small action cracked something open inside him. For 6 months he'd been clenched, tight, holding on with white knuckles to something that was already gone. Now he exhaled. He let go. Not of hope for the future, just of the specific future he'd been demanding. And that changed everything. Within 2 weeks, Daniel's panic attack stopped, not because his situation improved, because he stopped fighting what couldn't be changed. Within a month, his performance at work recovered. His boss noticed. You seem different, more focused. Within 3 months, Daniel started doing things for himself, not to impress anyone, not to become someone his ex-wife would regret losing, just because he was alive and had time and energy to invest. He took a pottery class. He'd always been curious but never had time. Now he had time, because he wasn't spending 40 hours a week obsessing over someone who'd moved on. He reconnected with friends he'd neglected. At first, they were cautious. Daniel had become exhausting to be around, always talking about the same thing, always miserable. But now he was different, lighter, present, actually listening instead of just waiting for his turn. to talk about his problems. One friend asked him directly, "What happened to you?" Daniel thought about it. "I stopped fighting a war I couldn't win." But here's what most people don't understand about Shikata Ganai. It's not just about accepting bad things that happen to you. It's about understanding something fundamental about existence. Most of what happens in life is outside your control. The weather, the economy, other people's choices, your genetics, random chance. You can influence some of these things. You can't control them. And when you spend your energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you guarantee your own suffering. Shikata Ganai doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become strategic. You focus on the tiny slice of life you can actually influence, and you let go of everything else. Daniel started applying this everywhere. Traffic made him angry. Shikata Ganai. It cannot be helped. He could control his route and departure time. He couldn't control other drivers or accidents or construction. His boss was unreasonable. Shikata Ganai. He could control his own work quality and job search. He couldn't control his boss's personality. His parents kept asking when he'd remarry. Shikata Ganai. He could control how much he shared about his personal life. He couldn't control their opinions or expectations. Every time he felt himself getting worked up about something, he paused and asked one question: "Can I change this?" If yes, he took action. If no, Shikata Ganai. It sounds simple. It is simple. But simple doesn't mean easy, because accepting you can't control something requires you to face one of the most uncomfortable truths about human existence. You're not as powerful as you think you are. Your ego hates this. Your ego wants you to believe you're the master of your fate, the captain of your soul, the architect of your destiny, and you are, within limits, very real limits, understanding those limits, accepting them, working within them. That's wisdom. Ignoring those limits, fighting them, pretending they don't exist, that's suffering. A year after his divorce, Daniel was in a completely different place. Not because his external circumstances had dramatically improved. He still lived alone. He still had the same job. He still had debt from the marriage, but internally, completely transformed. His co-workers started coming to him for advice, not because he was particularly wise, because he was calm, steady, unshakable. Someone's project would fall apart and they'd be panicking. Daniel would ask simple questions. Can you fix it? If yes, what's the first step? If no, Shikata Ganai. His manager actually asked him to lead a workshop on stress management. Daniel laughed. "I don't manage stress. I just stopped creating it." But then he thought about it. Maybe he could teach this. Maybe other people needed to hear about Shikata Ganai. So he prepared a simple presentation. He told his story. He explained the concept. He walked his co-workers through how to apply it. And something unexpected happened. 3 people came up to him afterward in tears. One woman said, "I've been trying to force my adult son to get his life together for 5 years. It's destroying our relationship and it's not working. I needed to hear this." One man said, "My father has dementia. I keep trying to remind him who I am and getting frustrated when he doesn't remember. I've been fighting something that can't be helped." Another woman said, "I've been bitter about a promotion I didn't get for 18 months. I've been poisoning myself and it's not changing anything." Daniel realized something profound. Most people's suffering doesn't come from what happens to them. It comes from fighting what happened to them. The divorce hurt, but Daniel had made it torture by refusing to accept it. The paralyzed man from the doctor's story was disabled, but he made himself miserable by fighting to walk instead of learning to live. This is the secret of Shikata Ganai. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Life will hurt you, people will disappoint you, your body will fail you, your plans will collapse. That's guaranteed. But whether you suffer is up to you. Suffering is what happens when you fight the unfightable, when you demand reality be different than it is. Acceptance ends that fight. And when the fight ends, peace is what remains. Now here's where this gets really interesting, because Shikata Ganai isn't just an emotional technique. It's backed by some of the most cutting-edge neuroscience on stress and resilience. A research team at Stanford has been studying what they call psychological flexibility. And that's the ability to adapt your thinking and behavior in response to changing circumstances. They discovered something remarkable. People with high psychological flexibility have dramatically lower rates of anxiety and depression, not because they experience fewer negative events, because they respond to negative events differently. When something bad happens, inflexible people get stuck. They ruminate, they catastrophize, they keep replaying what went wrong and how it should have been different. Flexible people do something else. They quickly assess what can be changed versus what can't. They direct their energy to what can be changed and they accept what can't. This isn't the same as giving up. It's strategic allocation of mental resources. Think about it like this. You have a limited amount of mental and emotional energy each day. When you spend that energy fighting things you can't control, you have nothing left for things you can control. Shikata Ganai is about energy conservation, about making sure your finite resources go to battles you can actually win. Another research group at Harvard studied survivors of extreme trauma, Holocaust survivors, POWs, natural disaster survivors, people who experienced the absolute worst humanity and nature can offer. They wanted to understand why some of these people recovered and built meaningful lives while others remained broken decades later. The key differentiator wasn't the severity of what they experienced. It was their locus of control. People who believed they should have been able to control what happened to them stayed traumatized. They kept replaying the experience, looking for what they should have done differently. People who accepted that what happened was beyond their control recovered, not because they didn't care, because they directed their energy to rebuilding instead of replaying. This is Shikata Ganai in action. It's not about being cold or uncaring. It's about being strategic, about where you invest your psychological energy. Daniel didn't stop caring about his marriage. He stopped fighting a battle that was already lost so he could focus on battles he could win. And the more he applied this principle, the more he realized something that changed his entire worldview. Most of what people call strength is actually rigidity. Most of what people call weakness is actually flexibility. We admire people who never give up, who keep fighting no matter what, who refuse to accept defeat. Sometimes that's admirable.
When you're fighting something that can actually be changed, but when you're fighting reality itself, that's not strength, that's self-destruction. True strength is knowing when to fight and when to accept, when to push and when to flow, when to grip and when to release. Water is soft, it yields, it flows around obstacles, yet water carves through stone. Rigidity breaks, flexibility endures. Daniel started studying this concept more deeply. He discovered that Shikata Ganai was just one expression of a much broader philosophy. In Stoicism, they call it the dichotomy of control. Focus on what's in your control, accept what's not. In Buddhism, they call it non-attachment. You can care deeply without clinging desperately. In Taoism, they call it wu wei, effortless action, going with the flow instead of against it. Different cultures, different languages, same wisdom, because this isn't just one culture's philosophy, it's a fundamental truth about how humans can minimize suffering and maximize peace. 2 years after his divorce, Daniel met someone new. He wasn't looking. He'd accepted that he might be single for a long time. Shikata Ganai. They met at a pottery class. She asked to borrow a tool. They started talking.
They got coffee afterwards. The relationship developed slowly, naturally, without desperation. The old Daniel would have been terrified, would have been checking his phone constantly, would have been planning 15 steps ahead, would have been trying to control every variable to ensure it worked out. The new Daniel did something different. He enjoyed each moment as it came. He was honest about what he wanted. He paid attention to what she wanted. And he accepted that the relationship would either work or it wouldn't. He couldn't control her feelings. He couldn't control whether their values aligned. He couldn't control whether circumstances would pull them apart. He could control showing up authentically, communicating clearly, treating her with respect, and being someone worth being with. Everything else, Shikata ga nai. 6 months into the relationship, she told him something that made him realize how much he'd changed. I dated someone before you who was so anxious about the relationship working out that he suffocated me. He needed constant reassurance. He was always worried I was going to leave. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I left because the anxiety was unbearable. You're different. You're present, but not clingy. You care, but you're not desperate. It makes me want to be closer to you because I don't feel trapped. Daniel understood. The old him had driven his ex-wife away by trying too hard to keep her. His desperation to control the outcome had destroyed the outcome. Now he was doing the opposite, caring deeply, staying present, and accepting that he couldn't control whether she stayed. Paradoxically, this made the relationship stronger, because she felt free. And people who feel free choose to stay. People who feel trapped try to escape. This is another layer of Shikata ganai. When you accept you can't control something, you often end up influencing it more effectively. When Daniel was fighting to get his ex-wife back, he pushed her further away. When he accepted the divorce and moved on, he became attractive again. Not to her, to others, to himself. When people try to control their reputation, they come across as fake. When they accept they can't control what others think and just live authentically, people respect them. When parents try to control their adult children's choices, they destroy the relationship. When they accept their children's autonomy and offer support without demands, the children often ask for their advice. Control is a paradox. The more you grasp, the more slips through your fingers. The more you release, the more stays in your hand. 3 years after his divorce, Daniel got a message from his ex-wife. She wanted to meet for coffee, to apologize, to explain what had happened. The old Daniel would have jumped at this opportunity, would have hoped it meant she wanted him back, would have planned what to say to make her realize her mistake. The new Daniel felt nothing, not anger, not hope, not much of anything. He agreed to meet because there was no reason not to, but he had no agenda, no expectations. They met. She apologized for how she'd left. She explained she'd been unhappy for years but didn't know how to communicate it. She'd felt trapped and had run away because she didn't know how else to escape. She told him she'd been in therapy. She'd learned a lot about herself. She'd hurt him, and she was sorry. Daniel listened. He thanked her for the apology. He told her he'd also been in therapy and had learned a lot. Then she asked the question he knew was coming. "Do you think we could try again?" 3 years earlier, this question would have been everything he wanted. He would have said yes immediately. He would have done anything for a second chance. Now he felt complete clarity. "No, I don't think so." She looked surprised, hurt. "But you seem so much better, so much calmer. I think it could work now." Daniel smiled gently. "I am better. That's exactly why I know it wouldn't work. I'm different now. You're different now. The people we are today, don't have the history to build on. We'd be starting from scratch, and honestly, I don't want to. I'm not angry with you. I don't hate you. I just don't have the desire to try again. I've moved on, and I think you should too. She started to argue, to explain why it would be different this time, all the things she'd changed. Daniel let her finish. Then he said something that ended the conversation. I accept that you want another chance, and I accept that I don't. Both of these things can be true, and there's nothing to debate. Shikata Ganai. She didn't understand, but he didn't need her to. He paid for his coffee. He wished her well. He left, and he felt nothing but peace. That's the ultimate form of Shikata Ganai, not just accepting external circumstances, accepting your own choices, your own boundaries, your own authentic preferences. Daniel didn't want his ex-wife back. 3 years earlier, he'd been willing to do anything to get her back. Now he genuinely didn't want it. Accepting that truth without guilt, without feeling like he should want it. That's freedom. So many people stay in situations they've outgrown because they think they should still want what they used to want. You should want to keep the job you went to school for. You should want to stay in your hometown near your family. You should want to make your parents proud by becoming a doctor. But what if you don't? What if you wanted those things once, but don't anymore? Shikata Ganai applies here too. You can't control what you genuinely want or don't want. You can only accept it and act accordingly. Fighting your authentic self is the same as fighting any other reality. It creates suffering without changing the outcome. Daniel's divorce had forced him to learn something most people never learn. That acceptance is the foundation of peace. That peace is the foundation of strength. And that strength comes from flowing with reality, not fighting it. 4 years after his divorce, Daniel wrote a book, not a memoir, a practical guide to applying Shikata Ganai in everyday life. He didn't expect much. It was just something he wanted to do. An expression of what he'd learned. A gift to anyone struggling the way he had struggled. The book sold 19,000 copies in the first year. People reached out constantly with stories of how the concept had changed their lives. A woman with chronic pain stopped fighting her condition and started adapting her life to it. Her quality of life improved dramatically. A man accepted that his business had failed and needed to close. He stopped throwing good money after bad and started planning his next venture. A parent accepted that their child was gay and stopped trying to change them. Their relationship healed over and over the same pattern. Someone fighting reality, creating their own suffering, learning to accept what couldn't be changed, finding peace. Daniel realized he'd stumbled onto something ancient and universal, a truth that every wisdom tradition had discovered independently. You cannot control the ocean.
Like you can learn to surf, you cannot control the seasons. You can plant crops accordingly. You cannot control other people, you can control yourself. And when you fully accept these limits, when you stop demanding the impossible, life becomes infinitely simpler, not easier, simpler. You still experience pain, loss, disappointment, failure, death, all the hard parts of being human, but you stop adding a second layer of suffering on top of that pain, the suffering that comes from demanding it be different. This is what the Japanese survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki understood. What the people who rebuilt after earthquakes and tsunamis understood. They didn't pretend it didn't hurt. They didn't suppress their grief. They felt everything, fully, deeply. And then they said, Shikata Ganai, it cannot be helped. And they began to rebuild.
Not because they were optimistic, not because they believed everything would be okay, because they accepted reality and chose to work with it instead of against it. That's what Daniel learned. That's what changed his life. And that's what you need to understand if you want to maintain peace when everything falls apart. The technique is simple. When something difficult happens, ask yourself one question. Can I change this? If yes, change it. Take action. Do what you can. If no, Shikata ganai, it cannot be helped. Accept it and redirect your energy to what you can change. That's it. That's the entire technique. But living it, that requires practice. Lots of practice. You'll forget. You'll catch yourself fighting the unfightable. That's normal. When you notice, just pause, acknowledge it, Shikata ganai, and redirect. Over time, it becomes automatic. You'll start seeing clearly what's in your control and what's not. You'll stop wasting energy on the things you can't change. And as that happens, something remarkable occurs. The things you can change start improving because you're finally giving them your full attention and energy. Your relationships get better because you stop trying to control others and start working on yourself. Your career advances because you stop complaining about circumstances and start developing skills. Your health improves because you stop fighting your genetics and start optimizing your choices. Everything within your control gets better. Everything outside your control stops draining you. And in that shift, you discover something most people never find: real peace, not the absence of problems, the presence of acceptance. Daniel found it. Millions of others have found it. And you can find it too. All you have to do is stop fighting reality and start working with it. Shikata ganai. It cannot be helped. And when you truly understand these 4 words, when you feel them in your bones, everything changes, not your circumstances, you. And when you change, somehow everything else seems to shift around you, not because you controlled it, because you stopped trying to. If this video helped you understand something you needed to understand, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and most importantly, comment below with the one thing you're going to accept starting today. What reality have you been fighting that you're ready to release? Write it down. Make it real. Start your journey to peace right now. Because Shikata ganai isn't just a philosophy, it's a practice. And practice begins this moment. See you in the next video. Until then, be present, walk with honor, follow the path.